when people engage in such a passionate way, sometimes aggressive and toxic, even though it's not the best format, they are doing that because they care, right? The worst thing that could happen for a game or for a community is not for people to complain or to be aggressive, it's for people to quit.
Greetings, summoners, and welcome back to another RiftGuides WildRift video. My name is Terry, and today we have for you guys an exclusive interview with Riot executive Leo Faria. He's the global head of WildRift Esports, and if you enjoyed the interview, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content. Now, without much further ado, here's the entire interview. I want to congratulate you on the success of the Horizon Cup, first of all. I remember tuning in and thinking, he talked about this beforehand, and I remember him being so excited, and I was so happy that it turned out really well for you guys.
That's awesome, man. Thanks a lot. Yeah, it was so fun to see it all happening, and players playing on stage for the first time. It was super fun, and I think we're really proud. So thank you for saying that.
Of course. So speaking of the Horizon Cup, what were some of your biggest struggles going into it, and do you think you learned a lot from the opportunity to prepare for the upcoming year?
For sure, man. I would say Horizon Cup, one of our biggest goals was really to learn. I would say we had three main goals for Horizon Cup. First of all, we wanted to learn how to produce a mobile show, right? It was our first thing ever in mobile and esports, so there was a lot to learn there. And I think we had a few challenges when it comes to infrastructure, technology, distributing phones for all participating teams, making sure they had enough time to practice on those phones. And we definitely learned a lot from that experience. The other thing that was definitely a big challenge was just the overall state of the world as far as logistics and COVID goes. Traveling was still hard. We had to fly hundreds of people into Singapore to make the show happen. Differently from more established sports like LoL Esports, a lot of the players were young. Some of them were flying internationally for the first time. Some of them didn't have passports. So, the whole logistical apparatus to make that show happen was, I think, an interesting challenge as well. We also did a lot of experimentation, both, things that were in front of the camera, but also behind the scenes. You probably saw like experimentations with the stage and the set design, like different chairs. The desks were high instead of your traditional, desks. We experimented with broadcast segments, how to do analysis, how to, we did a lot of experimentation with on-air talent that I think was super interesting, right? We're trying to find the faces of WildRift Esports. And the last thing I think we want to really to do is just give the community and fans a taste of what WildRift Esports looks like. We talked about this, how last year was kind of year zero, right? And this is the year that we're really going to go all in and execute things for the first time. So yeah, I think we did that. I think we accomplished that goal of, again, giving people a taste. So
if you were to give like a percentage of how much the foundation has been set for the upcoming year, what percentage would that generally be? And then what do you think you would have to improve upon for the upcoming year? Because when I watched the Horizon Cup not last year, but like a couple months ago, I remember thinking they did a really good job. And I remember you were talking about a lot of the struggles leading up to it, but I couldn't really think about like what you guys could improve, because it was a really great experience. Like, what would you say? What foundations have been set for the Horizon Cup, and at which points would you think you need to improve more upon?
Terry, I like that question, man. Look, I think, again, we're all proud of Horizon Cup, but I think we have so much to improve, right? I would say we're probably 25% the way of what we really think WildRift Esports can be and will be. So one of the things we definitely can do a better job is just overall marketing, right? I think a huge challenge of Horizon Cup is a lot of our players and fans didn't know it happened, right? We had, I think, very limited promotion. We had very limited to none in-game integrations, and these are definitely something we wanted and we will do a lot better this year. Something else that we have to continue trying and iterating on is just the dynamic of the show, right? And this is something that I think it's really important, because we talked about how the WildRift community and fans are different. And I think the show was good, but it can be a lot better because we are used to a way of doing esports shows, right? You have a pre-match, then you go into peaks and bans, you have the match, you have post-game analysis. And even though we like that format, we can do better, right? We can try things different. We're going to be taking a lot of creative risks. So, some of them will work, some of them won't, but I think that's another important part of the show. I think one of the things we did well, and we're probably going to continue doing, is the whole match operations. So that's everything about the format of the competition, the fact that we had BO7s for the first time ever in a Riot Esports environment. I think that was really cool. We're probably going to continue to iterate on that. And probably the last thing is the viewing experience itself. Because WildRift is such a new game, there is a lot we want to do that's still not there. Like the spectator mode can be so much better, right? In terms of showing stats, in terms of showing, peak ban rates, percentages, win rates throughout the tournament, live stats and events around objectives. There's so much we can do to make that experience better that is absolutely something we want to do, better this year.
So you mentioned marketing, and I do remember asking you about it last time. I know that you're not the one directly in charge of marketing, but for your personal views of how Wild Rift is and what it is becoming, what do you think would have to improve for Wild Rift's marketing to be able to pull off the kind of perception of Wild Rift that you were personally looking for?
Right. So I think you're right that I can't speak to the game marketing, but I can definitely speak to the WildRift Esports marketing. We also talked about this before, right? How we are coming into the space, I think, with our eyes very open, knowing that there's a lot of skepticism around mobile game and around around mobile gaming and mobile esports. Our biggest challenge in WildRift Esports, I think, at this moment is one, just creating awareness, right? Letting people know that competitions are happening, both for regional competitions, but also global competitions. But I would say the other part is just telling the stories of players and teams, right? People like esports when they have something they care about, when they have a team that they like or a player that they like. So building those heroes, building rivalries, right? And really creating those stories is something that we can and, will do a lot better this year. The other part of marketing that I want to speak to is how we integrate the in-game experience, right? One thing is I'm a player and then I'm also an esports fan, but hopefully you can have one single experience that happens across the game and the sport. And that's what I think is, our superpower as a company, because we can do all those things and make sure they work together. So for this year, you're going to see a lot more in-game integrations, everything from events, missions, content, really tied to esports. And the reality is, at the beginning of the life of a sport, the player base is your audience, right? What we see is over time, when a sport matures, you have folks who are not necessarily playing but watching the sport. Maybe they are former players who no longer play. Maybe they're just esports fans. But early on, the players are our number one audience for esports, and that's where we're going to focus.
So I know that there's been a lot of, for lack of a better word, kind of toxicity from the community in regards to how they communicate with the Riot team. And it's become such a cultural norm for them to do that, especially coming from like League of Legends and the practices that they've had with developers in that scene. But Wild Rift is a completely new game, and the fact that such practices exist, first of all, I want to say I'm sorry about the community. Some of the experiences that the social media people go through is really horrendous. Like, I'm pretty active on Twitter. I see a lot of developers getting flamed just out of the blue. I don't want to keep this too negative, but on your end, as someone as the head of esports for Wild Rift, do you experience similar situations, or if not, could you tell me how your community interactions as a whole typically go?
Of course, man. So first of all, it's very nice of you to say that. Thank you. Um, here's my perception to the situation, and I know a lot of writers feel the same way. People, when people engage in such a passionate way, sometimes aggressive and toxic, even though it's not the best format, they are doing that because they care, right? The worst thing that could happen for a game or for a community is not for people to complain or to be aggressive, it's for people to quit, right? So if you're complaining, it's because that thing matters to you. And I think as developers, it's part of our job to understand, read between the lines, try to learn from those interactions, even when they are toxic. And of course, I'm not saying I support toxic behavior whatsoever. It takes a lot of effort to go through some of those interactions, and I think writers can get frustrated. But again, I rather have people complaining, putting pressure on us instead of just quitting and go play. There are so many amazing games out there that it would just be easier for folks to say, you know what, I'm not playing WildRift anymore. I'll go play something else or go watch something else. I think again, it's just part of our job to again learn how to navigate those interactions. I definitely hear people complaining every day on all sorts of medias and channels. I think it's also important for us as product leaders to have a vision for what we're trying to build, right? It's a fine balance between listening to the community, learning from what they need, but also having a vision, right? If you were to do everything fans ask us, we would have deleted half of the champions from League of Legends because people, don't like some of them. So I think having a strong vision of what you're trying to build while making sure that vision is informed by players' feedback is important. And look, we're humans. I think we make mistakes, and sometimes we're not listening, and players are right to complain. So yeah, again, I think my overall position is I wish interactions were more positive for sure. But yeah, I'm glad that they happen and that people care.
So you mentioned visions and goals and staying strong to that. And I know that's such a fundamental Riot concept that you told me about before as well. For esports, what would you say your biggest vision for the upcoming year would be?
Oh, yeah. Look, we have a few goals, and I'm happy to walk you through them. And I'll be quick. The first one is something internal that I don't think your audience will care about a lot, but we need to build a team, right? We have plans to have hundreds of writers working in WildRift Esports, and we have a lot of recruiting to do. That means making sure every one of our 8 regional teams plus the team on the global side are equipped with competitive operations and marketing and technology and content production and broadcast and events production, so we can execute everything you want around the world, right? We talked about all of these things we want to do. So having the team, I think, is a big deal. If you go on the Riot website right now, we have over 500 positions open for recruiting. That takes a lot of effort. So, but again, it's boring stuff people won't care about. I think another goal is just establishing the competitions, right? That means creating the brands, really establishing like the WRL in China, WCS in Southeast Asia, WBR in Brazil, and all of the 8 competitions around the world. It takes a lot of effort because you're building a brand, you're building a community, you're building structure, you're finding production partners. And of course, Icon's Global Championship, right? And we're going to crown the first ever WildRift World Champion. So establishing those competitions is going to be a big deal for this year. It's going to be the first of many. The third goal is, of course, acquiring an audience, right? It's having that initial critical mass, because now you have, I think the community is quite scattered, right, in different channels. So we want to make sure we're really creating that audience, and that comes by creating products and creating watching habits and creating proper channels where people can communicate and find information, right? I mean, we don't have like a WildRift Esports website yet. we're now starting to establish social channels. So we're definitely going to put a lot of energy in that. And the last part is, this is going to be the year where we're going to start building a business around the sport. I think we also talked about how important it is for teams and players to be able to live out of playing in our sport, right? So you're going to see us investing in, designing the business model, establishing partnerships with brands and sponsors, seeing revenue coming out of the game and going to teams, right? We want to make sure they are well funded to run their operations. So yeah.
You mentioned about funding the player base for like the professional teams and that so in relation to that, do you guys have any plans with, I know League of Legends does a lot of balancing regards to how the competitive play ends up turning out, and they have to balance that out. And like, if there's a specific pick that sees a lot of play in Worlds, like chances are going into it, it'll be nerfed a little bit. So do you guys see those kinds of collaborations with the development team for the competitive scene, alongside what would that partnership that you mentioned really look like?
Right. So look, we work really closely with the game dev team in multiple ways. One of the ways is just developing the features that we need for esports, right? And we're talking about things like the spectator mode and tournament draft, chrono break, live stats data API, all of those features that are really fundamental for us to run the sport. The other way we work with them is something we're starting this year, is making sure we have, again, integrated experience, right? So you have in-game events, you have in-game content, you have, skins, baubles, avatars, all that kind of stuff that makes the experience rich, create opportunity for revenue. And the third way is what you just said. So we definitely collaborate as far as the calendar and patching and balancing. It's not like we of course have a competitive operations team in esports. It's not like we go to them and say, hey, can you balance the game in this way so it support esports? That doesn't happen. The game team, when they are making balances changes or any type of changes to the game, they will look at the entire population from the bronze player to the professional level, and they will make decisions, right? But what we do align on is the calendar, right? So we won't have a major change in the game before icons begin, right? But maybe we're going to have a small patch that make competition more interesting. And we have been doing that for League of Legends for many years, and it works. So there is a lot of collaboration there, but at the end of the day, the game team, the game design team, the balancing team, they are the ones calling the shots on how to balance the game. And they're looking at everything, again, from regular players all the way to the professional sport.
For sure. You mentioned being one of the goals, bring the entire world together for the esports. And I'm sorry to ask this because I'm sure you get asked this a lot, especially all the developer teams. Does this include India?
Right, dude, don't be sorry. Look, I feel their pain, man. I hear, everything we comment, people ask, what about India? And I think it's a fair question. And again, it's the same thing about people complaining. They're asking because they care and because they want to play the game. And I think we're all super humbled. Unfortunately, I can't speak to the plans to launch the game there. What I can tell you from an esports perspective, when the game is launched in India, we'll be ready to go. We'll be ready to build an esports scene there. I think one question people are asking now is, can you call Icons a real global championship if India's not there? Which I think is a fair question. But here's how we see it. When you establish a global competition, a lot of things get into, are considered to see who is attending, right? And if you truly value competitive integrity as we do, a competition cannot not happen if a specific region can attend, right? If tomorrow the United States say we're not participating in the Olympics is still happening, right? If Brazil drops out of the FIFA World Cup, the World Cup is going to happen anyway. We had issues with Southeast Asian teams not being able to participate in all PC Worlds. Worlds happened anyway, right? So as much as, again, I feel their pain, this is going to be very much a global competition. I think the challenge here is of course, the Indian community and Indian players and teams, they don't even have the chance to participate, right? So it's not like they don't want, they don't even have the chance. But what's the alternative? The alternative is not doing a global championship. And when you do that, you're actually penalizing the entire globe, every player from every region around the world. And we don't want to do that. So again, it hurts. I wish WildRift was available in India right now, right? Riot is, by the way, making a lot of investments to grow our presence in India. If you go on our website right now, some of those 100 roles, 500 roles are in India, including country manager, building a leadership team and expanding our presence there. So that's top of mind for us. But again, whenever the game is available, we'll be ready for esports.
So on a similar train of thought, I remember we talked about the console release, and you were thinking like you weren't too sure how you would treat those two different platforms, because at the same time you want equal playing fields. But like if you look at other esports such as Apex Legends, Pokemon Unite, like Pokemon Unite's far less developed for sure, but Apex Legends has a competitive scene where even controller support alongside mouse and keyboard can play against each other.
Right.
So have you thought about like exactly what that would look like a bit more, because that will definitely be an obstacle in the future?
True. Tara, we're not there yet, but I think that position is just becoming more clear in my head and everyone's head here, right? Crowning, I think that I talked about this before. I think we really should crown the best WildRift team in the world, period, right? If you have a competition for console and a competition for mobile, you end up with like two world champions, the mobile world champion and the console world champion. I don't think that makes sense at all. There are, I think, a lot of things to be decided before we can make a decision here. And one big question that our team haven't, I think, made a public commitment yet is, do we have crossplay between WildRift and phone and other platforms? If the answer is yes, and that's a big if, I think we would probably lean towards having one single global competition, right, where players can play in whatever device they want. That's not a formal position yet, but yeah, it's probably the direction we would explore.
So, kind of similar to the community section that I mentioned before, I know that Riot does a lot of partnerships for content creators. Do you think that such an opportunity and partnership for content creators, not just the professional players, will eventually occur in the future?
I don't have a ton of context on our content creator platform on the game side. As you probably know, Riot has the League partner program, and I know the team has plans to expand that to cover all of our titles in a very significant way. But again, I don't have a ton of context. I wish I had, and I would be happy to share. But what I can tell you, we definitely want to do a lot more on the esports side. You probably saw we did a very light experiment with co-streaming for Horizon Cup. The team over Valorant Esports, I think, did a very nice job with co-streaming. And there's just a lot we have to do, and we're cooking some really nice stuff for icons that we'll be able to share soon. So, man, that's a big deal, right? The way you build the communities, kind of showcasing and creating a platform and opportunities for content creators to engage. And we are 100% going to do that with WildRift Esports. So, this is a commitment. We're gonna announce some nice stuff really soon.
Do you ever think that, I know like the Worlds for League of Legends, they make those skins for the winners.
Right.
Do you think that'll ever happen for WildRift? I think that'd be such a cool way to involve everyone into just the entire scene in general. But what do you think on that?
So I'm gonna give you a not super straight answer, but I promise it will be good. We definitely want to have in-game content celebrating sports. So the answer is absolutely yes. I don't know if the format will be exactly the same, and here's why. Here's one of the big challenges with what we do with LoL Sports. When a team wins Worlds, if the skins do very well, the winning team makes a ton of money. The other teams don't, right? and we want to solve that problem. We can solve it in multiple different ways, right? Maybe we distribute the money more evenly across all participating teams. Maybe the skins or whatever content it is, it's celebrating the tournament instead of the winning team. There are multiple ways we could approach that problem. But I think what we're trying to do is just make sure everyone is supported, right? Instead of the winning teams. It's the idea of we want to have a healthy sport instead of just putting a lot of money into the hand of winners. We compensate performance in different ways, right? With healthy prize pools, and we're going to have a quite healthy prize pool this year. But the answer is yes, man. We want to do. We definitely want to have in-game content. Absolutely.
It's really great to hear you talk about just so many different aspects of the esport. Like, I mean, obviously you're the one in charge, so you should know like what's happening. But your understanding is amazing because I've done research on like the games that have died in the past from the lack of the proper infrastructure of esports, and like so many different esports fail to either support their players properly or they pump in too much money and they oversaturate the market and they fall out after. So it's good to see that you guys are taking your pace, even when the community keeps asking for more, asking for more. The fact that you guys stay strong in your own visions and take your own pace is really admirable. So I just want to say great job on your end. Great job.
Dude, let me say, I think the consequence of that is things take more time, right? It would be a lot easier for us to make moves that would be, headline grabbers, right? You have like a group of kids making many millions of dollars. That's easy. But the reality is there's no cutting corners in building a sports, like a healthy sports scene, and it's going to take time. So if I can ask our community one thing is patience. Give us a little bit of time. And I don't want to use that as an excuse. If we're too slow, if we're not listening, if we're not doing a great job, people should complain. People should be a pain in the ass, and we're gonna handle. But we're just getting started, right? So I think if folks could have patience, we're gonna get there. We're gonna make the investments. We talked about this. We are in it in the long run. We hope we're gonna be we're gonna be celebrating the 10th Icons Global Championship 10 years from now, and that's where what we're all about.
I also want to highlight that point on patience. It's something that I know a lot of the community, hopefully I don't get flamed too hard about this, but a lot of the community does lack. And I know complaining is really healthy, but I wish, this is from my own personal desires, that people could try to be a bit more understanding of the WildRift team. There's a lot of behind the scenes struggles and different issues that arise without a doubt when you're coming to develop what WildRift is trying to become. And I mentioned this already, but I do sincerely feel so bad for the ones that interact with social media a lot, and I'm sorry that the community comes off that way so many of the times, and I wish everyone good mental health because I can't imagine how trying that can be during the worst of times.
Thank you so much, man. It's very nice of you to say that, really. Thank you. Your video's frozen for me. I don't know if anything wrong with my PC, sorry.
It might be on my end.
It's okay. I can hear you. I can hear you fine.
Okay.
We're good. I just can't see you, but I can hear you.
I'm running a whole bunch of different processes that I'm not used to, so
no worries. No problem at all.
How's everything been on just the workload? I'm assuming it's got to be really stressful at this time of year. I know Riot always begins 2022 with a lot of different plans, a lot of different new structures.
Yeah, man, look, it's busy, and it's mostly busy because we have all of these competitions kicking off around the world. You're probably seeing some of the stuff we did even over the break on China and Korea, open qualifiers happening around the world. We had the season start where, on January 7th or 8th when we announced a bunch of stuff. But we are also pretty much 6 or 7 months away from icons, right? We haven't announced all the exact dates yet, but we talked about, it's going to happen in the summer. So we have a lot of work and not a lot of time. As I said, we're still building the team, hiring a bunch of people, but we're super confident that it's going to be an awesome show that's going to blow people's minds. And yeah, there's a lot of work going on. We're super excited going to Europe for our first show ever. So it's gonna be massive. And yeah, with that comes a lot of work. So we're definitely busy, but we're all super excited. Everyone is energized, putting a lot of work, and yeah, really happy to be going into the first ever season of WildRift Esports.
Thank you for your time, Leo. I really appreciate the chance for another interview. I love WildRift, and I want to continue doing what I do. And I want to say sincerely, thank you so much for this interview opportunity. I love the chance to talk to you again. I love your energy. I love your passion for WildRift. It's very refreshing. Very, very
Thank
refreshing.
You so much. And look, it's right back at you, man. Right? We don't build anything alone, and we build the community together, and it's because of content creators like you that we are able to build a community, right, and build fandom and get information out to people and get people excited about the things that we do. So we're definitely building this thing together. So you're thanking me, but I'm thanking you back. Thank you for what you do, and I'm always available. You know how to find us if you ever want to talk.